Welcome back, everyone. This is Frank DeMore with the End Times Research Ministry. Today is March 31st of 2016. And I want to just cover a couple prophecies to begin with, because the prophecies that I want to show you, they're definitely important because they're signs of the last days. Now, many of you who don't know anything about Bible prophecy may not know there are certain cities in the scriptures that God points to make sure that we keep on the watch for. And one of those cities happens to be Jerusalem. Now in the Old Testament, Zechariah tells us, you could see the scripture there in Zechariah 12 verses 2 and 3, he says this, "Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling until all the people round about. And when they shall be in the siege both against Judea and against Jerusalem, and in that day will I make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces, though all the people of the earth are gathered together against it." We know for sure that Jerusalem is going to be in the spotlight, targeted in the last days. And in order for people to believe it, or to believe in the word of the Lord and what he has given to us in the scripture in Zechariah, then you should begin to see Jerusalem as a target for many of these nations, especially the Islamic nations. Now we're getting pretty close to Passover. Now in the center of Jerusalem, you have the Temple Mount, right there in East Jerusalem. And of course, you have the Al-Aqsa Mosque there as well. This is the Islam holy shrines there, and there's a lot of contention that's been going on over the years, and every year it seems to get worse. But the main focus is regaining this mosque, or I should say, taking it over completely from Israel, taking over the Dome of the Rock completely from Israel. And so Israel wouldn't be able to rebuild the third temple that we see prophesied by Jesus Christ. So there's a lot of information out on the website that you could check out that will show you that Islam has targeted Jerusalem and wants to destroy not only Jerusalem, but wants to destroy and get rid of the Jews completely. Now, part of this attack, or this constant barrage of hoping to take over this section of East Jerusalem, comes because of the Al-Aqsa Mosque and what the Jews, they actually own it, but the Jews are allowing the Arabs to run it, actually Jordan to run it. So as we get closer to Passover, once again, we see the X by the Arabs on the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Take a look at this.
Palestinian incitement related to the Al-Aqsa Mosque has significantly increased in the weeks leading up to Passover, which begins on April 22nd, in an attempt to raise tensions and cause disturbances and acts of terror. Hamas issued an official statement titled, "Al-Aqsa will remain the primary source of inspiration for the young avengers of the Jerusalem Intifada." Moreover, in recent...
I'm going to stop it right there. Make sure that you understand what they're saying. First of all, Hamas is an organization bent on the complete destruction of the nation of Israel. And when they're talking about these intifada, that means going after Israel or attacking Israel.
Days, a short documentary was posted to social networking sites claiming that Israel is carrying out underground excavations in Silwan towards the Mughrabi Gate and from under the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Salah calls on stopping the Israeli attacks on the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and even calls on the Jordanian government to launch a media war against Israel to reveal the Israeli aggression against the mosque.
Now, you have to understand one thing. In 1967, Israel retook East Jerusalem. They took over the Dome of the Rock. They took over this holy spot for the Jews, where the third temple is going to be rebuilt. And ever since 1967, we've seen the skirmishes, we've seen rioting, and we've seen, since 67, wars, where the Arabs have tried to destroy Israel, take it over, but that hasn't happened yet. But there's other attacks that will be coming, and I have no doubts in my mind that Islam the people who are listed both in the Psalm 83 war and that are listed in the Ezekiel 38 war are going to make attempts to try to wipe out the nation of Israel. Count on that to happen. But what we're seeing right now taking place are only the birth pains leading up to those wars. Now, if you download my book for free, you will also see there's a section about the birds, the fish, and the animals that are dying, and I've been listing the die-offs, these massive deaths, when they show up in the news, which is quite often. If you've been following my website or if you've gone to my book, you've seen hundreds and hundreds of these reports over the years. Well, today there was another one. I'm just going to play it for you so that you can see for yourself another one of these cases. Now, before you see this, there are a lot of different reasons why there's die-offs. We see pollution, we see the weather, we see people, we see animals, we see pestilence. So there's a lot of reasons. But the fact of the matter is, Hosea tells us, and there's other places as well in the scriptures, you could read it in the book of Revelation, where the birds, the fish, and the animals are going to die off in the last days. So let's take a look at this newest news that came out March 30th of 2016. Now, there was another report that came out on the 30th, yesterday, from the Ynet News. And the headline, "Why hasn't ISIS attacked Israel?" And that is a very good question. And what I found very interesting in this article that I will point out, make the connection for you, is that there are the same names that are listed in the wars that we haven't seen taken place yet. The ones that I referred to is Psalm 83 and Ezekiel 38. This article states that ISIS has already attacked Europe's soft underbelly 3 times, while the terrorist group has repeatedly threatened Israel. It has yet to attack Israelis on Israeli soil. Because of deterrence or perhaps a Mossad conspiracy, ISIS has held off from attacking the Jewish state. Now, I think I can give you a little bit of insight on why they haven't attacked yet. The article says, ISIS will continue to shock Europe for several months to come. There is no room for optimism and no sudden miracle will occur. Pessimists are already saying that Europe is finished for at least the next year. As intelligence comes out of impending attacks on stadiums, cup matches, tourist sites, event halls, restaurants, trains, and airports. Now I want to center what is being said down here. It says the leader of ISIS has no problem displaying his target list. At first, he wanted to take over Saudi Arabia. Okay, now this is important. Saudi Arabia, why? Let's take a look. Now, one of the nations that are listed in that Psalm 83 attack, you'll see here listed as number 2. The Ishmaelites, Saudi Arabia. And I'll definitely connect the dots, but let's continue. And take down the monarchy on his way to capturing the 2 Muslim holy cities of Mecca and Medina. At the same time, he wanted to launch terror attacks against the unbelievers, including the U.S. However, that part of the plan didn't succeed because of the diligence of security services in Washington and Riyadh. Europe, in its complacency, is viewed as an easy target for ISIS. So why doesn't it attack Israel? Now in this next paragraph, you'll see that ISIS leader has threatened that he hasn't forgotten Palestine. And of course, he has said that he's going to turn it into a graveyard. And there was another spokesman for al-Baghdadi, and it says this. Another one of the spokesmen also said in Hebrew that not even a single Israeli will remain alive in Jerusalem. But as of yet, they haven't attacked the soil of Israel. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. We read down here that Israel didn't respond. The two sides seem to be sitting in the back seat of the car in neutral. All they need to do is put the keys in the ignition. Al-Baghdadi's goals are to focus on taking over moderate Arab countries who cooperate with Israel, such as, now look at this, Egypt, Jordan, Morocco, and Saudi Arabia. So, the countries listed to attack Israel, here we go, Saudi Arabia, you'll have Jordan, and you have Egypt. Three of the participants in the Psalm 83 war. Now, ISIS has made it very, very clear to the world that their goal is to reestablish the caliphate, to bring back that old Islamic empire. We saw the eastern leg of that old Roman Empire finally phase out. They begin to decline in 1923. That was the Ottoman Empire, the eastern leg of that old Roman Empire that lived beyond the western leg of the old Roman Empire when it died out. Now, when you take a look at the caliphate that they're trying to establish, you'll see that the nations that they just referred to are Saudi Arabia, you see Jordan here, and you'll also see Egypt. They also mentioned Morocco, which is over here in part of the caliphate. Now, ISIS is already in Syria, they're already in Iraq, they're in the desert, the Sinai. So what they're doing is they're establishing their caliphate, the things that they said that they wanted to do. So slowly but surely, they're taking over the lands that were in that old Islamic world power, or the eastern leg of the old Roman Empire. Now, just a couple days ago, you saw ISIS hit into Pakistan. And so they're already in Libya, so they're on the move. So what is the reason that ISIS hasn't gone in physically and attacked Israel? I believe number one is that Israel is a superpower in its own right, and ISIS can't afford to mess with Israel at this time. And so their methodology is to go after Egypt, to go after Jordan, go after Morocco, Saudi Arabia, and these other countries that, by the way, are closing in on Israel. And once they have Israel surrounded, they can go in physically after Israel, because if they do this, if Europe can't control ISIS, and it certainly doesn't look like that right now, if they can't control ISIS and they do establish this caliphate that they've been working on now, then they'll have Israel surrounded and they can go in and try to destroy the nation of Israel. So when you're looking at the future and you see that if they're not stopped, if ISIS is not stopped and they overtake the nations that are listed in Psalm 83, then you can see that more than likely it will be ISIS who has taken over these countries and they go after Israel to fulfill Psalm 83. That is a good possibility. We'll just have to wait and see how it turns out. Now, obviously, once the Psalm 83 war is over and Israel isn't destroyed like they had hoped, there's going to be this other attack that will be coming, and that would be the Ezekiel chapter 38, of which we see Iran, we see, of course, many of these nations are already taken over by ISIS, or making an attempt right now of going into and taking them over. We see this already with Libya. We see it with Algeria. We see it with Morocco. We see it with Tunisia. So they're well on their way of making inroads on those nations that they need to form the caliphate. So let's keep in mind that everything that takes place is in God's timing. And I believe that the news that we're watching now is just formulating what is to come in the near future that it will fulfill the Psalm 83 and the Ezekiel 38 wars. And as soon as ISIS feels confident and strong enough in surrounding Israel, no doubt that they would make an attempt to attack them, to try to destroy them. Now, things can change, and this is why we need to stay on the watch, to watch what's going on, so the picture would become crystal clear to us by the end of the day. In other words, just before these prophecies are completely fulfilled, we should see a very, very clear picture of what's taking place, because we could put the Middle East peace puzzle together from the word of the Lord. Now, in this video, I previously mentioned the fact that there was bombings in Pakistan. And we now know from what the leader of Turkey said that he knew that one of the two bombers was in Turkey, and he went in to Brussels and he warned them that this man was there. As a result of Brussels not doing anything about it, this man detonated himself and obviously killed a lot of people in the process. Now, take a look at this, because you may see a lot of the similarities of what Brussels failed to do compared to what's happening now from this WND report. It was taken a day ago. Look at the headline: California, 100 shots by men chanting Allah Akbar. And here's a picture of the men that the sheriffs apprehended. It says deputies from the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Office and other agencies responded to a report of Allah Akbar chanting, turban-wearing men shooting assault rifles, handguns, and shotguns in a remote desert area, officials have confirmed. The incident took place Sunday in a Deep Creek Hot Springs area of the Apple Valley, according to Victor Valley News. The area is just north of the city of San Bernardino, where in December, 2 Muslims attacked a Christmas party, killing 14 and injuring another 22. The 2 terrorists later died in a shootout with police. So you talk about sleeper cells. It certainly, to me, looks like that this group of men who are out there shouting Allah Akbar, God, Allah is great, obviously, probably is one of the sleeper cells in that area. It goes on, the Victor Valley News said witnesses told a 911 operator that more than 100 shots were heard and 5 to 7 subjects wearing turbans were seen in the area shooting assault rifles, handguns, and shotguns. The news site said a reporting party told dispatchers there were 15 or more possible armed men of Middle Eastern descent who were camped out in the area chanting loudly through the night in what was believed to be their native language. Sheriff's officers who arrived first said the number of men, when approached, grabbed their possessions and began hiking toward a parking lot. And during the hike, the men reportedly huddled up in possible discussion and at one point split into 2 groups, the report said. CBS reported the investigation involved both the federal and local law enforcement officers and a total of 17 suspects. Officers say the men were cooperative as they were detained and searched, CBS reported. All 17 men were eventually released because sheriff's investigators say they had no outstanding warrants or criminal histories. A sheriff's spokesman said there was no evidence found that a crime had been committed by any of the subjects who were detained and they were released. Isn't this essentially the same thing that happened in Turkey when this man was released? He goes to Brussels. They don't see anything wrong with him. Boom. And he blows himself up and a lot of people are killed in Brussels. It goes on to say, but reports also said the FBI may conduct further interviews. Well, if the FBI conducts the interviews like Brussels did, you can count on Americans being killed just the way that the Brussels people were killed because their negligence of looking into who it is that's been radicalized by ISIS. Oh, look, when you look at this, you see the suspects, you know that they're out in the desert, they're shouting Allah Akbar is great. Why do you think that they're doing this? Obviously, there must be some connection to their homeland and their Islamic religion. And especially when we already saw that 2 of the people in the same area had took violence in their hands and killed a lot of people in San Bernardino. Now, if I was a law enforcement officer and I saw what took place, I certainly would make every effort to screen every single one of these people to make 100% sure that these people have nothing to do with ISIS. But right now, just by the fact of what they're doing as a group, certainly looks like they're coming together to make possibly some plan to hurt Americans. I'll let you decide. The leader of ISIS, he's not stopping in Europe. He's not stopping in the Middle East because their goal is to conquer everybody, including the United States. And I have no doubt in my mind that they do have people here in America. We've already seen some of the destruction these people are doing here in America. Now, if I was the FBI or I was a police official that was involved in rounding up these people, what I would do is you would have to infiltrate and find out where they're going, who they're talking to, what mosque they're going to, go into the mosque undercover and listen to see if you can hear anything that's going to show that any of these men are in the process of formulating plans to do destruction against Americans. I would put tails on every one of these people, find out where they're going, and listen to their conversation. Because if this group is affiliated with ISIS and they've been radicalized, every American's going to want to know about it before they do the same type of thing that happened in Brussels or in San Bernardino.